Greetings, this is an overview of the Epicor Eclipse messaging, activity logs, and trackers with a focus on trackers. Although Eclipse may be considered just an overblown inventory control and accounting and billing system, it actually has a wide variety of additional functions built in and a very robust set of communications tools. It has what could be kind of considered like a text messaging SMS system, which is the Eclipse messaging. It has a banner message system that can be turned on to give quick messages to people when they log in. And it has a tracker system as a way of assigning tasks which interacts with the messaging system, and you can tie it to a transaction, to a customer, to a user, which gives a level of meta information to go with the transaction, give people some idea of what the next step might be. So kind of a limited kind of task management system, I guess you could call it. And of course, almost everything in Eclipse has got log files built into it. Most of the logs are auto-posted. There's almost nothing you can do in Eclipse that isn't recorded in a log, which makes things very, very handy to find out who did what to who. Some of these logs, though, are also editable, so you can add notes to them manually rather than just auto-posting, and we'll cover some of that here. We will first review the Eclipse Messages system, which is accessible through your dashboard as seen in the picture. Although this presentation deals with the Solar interface, keep in mind as you're going through it that all of these functions also work in the old eTerm text interface, whether it be the message system, the activity logs, or the job queues. Although these functions have been in Eclipse for a very long time, it really wasn't until the Solar interface came out that they really became very robust and usable beyond just the basic messaging system. But if you have a mixed mode environment, you can still use these tools back and forth and have them work on everybody. Just like with your smartphone, when you get a new message, you'll get a little icon on the messenger showing you that you've got new messages. If you're like me, most of the messages that you get out of the messaging system are actually from the system itself, or what's referred to in Eclipse as the system phantom or the spooler control. And anytime you run a report or there's a process that you've set in motion, the phantom usually sends you a little message, tell you when it's done. If you're running reports, I believe the spooler usually spits out a little message, tells you the report's done. And they end up in here along with any messages that you have with individuals in the company. Keep in mind that the Eclipse messaging system only works with Eclipse users and inside Eclipse. It cannot interact with any type of messaging system outside of that. It is a fairly simple system. It might appear to be fairly primitive, and that's probably true. The real power of it is when you get it interacting with the tracker system. Anyway, creating new messages is as simple as, file new. You can start a message stream with any one user or a series of users that you can select from the drop-downs, or you can have message groups created by the system administrator, and you can mix and match all of it for one conversation stream. Here's an example of the creation of a message group called Inside. As you can see, it's dead simple to set up, but you have to have the right permissions to be able to have access to this tool. Once you've created a conversation thread, then messages are as simple as typing in the box and hitting send. Notice in the group messaging window that the system will tell you whether or not the people you're communicating to are online or offline or not. And of course, as soon as they log in, they'll have access to the messages that you sent. And conversation is continuous until you tell it to delete. And if you get tired of pressing the send button, in the lower left hand corner, notice the check mark box that says press enter to send. That if you select that, that'll make your life a little easier. Keep in mind this is just simple text. You can't attach screen captures or pictures or links of any form with this particular tool. To do some of that, you'd use the tracker system. And that's pretty much it for the Eclipse messaging. As mentioned before, almost everything that you do in Eclipse is logged. Most of these logs are uneditable and are automatically posted by the system. There are a few, though, that are an exception and will allow you to put in your own log notes. This particular tool that we're looking at right now, the user activity log entry, I think is kind of misnamed. I wouldn't really call it a log, but this would be where you would look up the history of trackers normally for a particular user, or you could possibly create a new tracker from here as well. This is a tool that you'd most often use to look up existing trackers or trackers that have been closed. As we'll discuss in greater detail in a little bit, the trackers can be assigned to various different regions within the system, and what these activity log entries are doing in a lot of cases are giving you access to the entries that are in a particular region. In this case, the customer activity log entry would allow you to search for trackers that are tied to a particular customer record or job. It also stores in here, for some reason I don't quite entirely understand, any document that you email out of the system directly to a customer. The record of that will also show. And as you can see in this example, there's the blue links that you're seeing in the body of that message is the sales order that was sent out, or acknowledgement actually in this case. And if you click on that, the system will jump you right into that transaction. Although this might be kind of confusing for people who don't come from an Eclipse background, Eclipse considers entities to be vendors or customers, so this is why these are all considered entity logs. The vendor activity log entry is going to look and act exactly the same as the customer log entry did, except for vendors. And once again, you can, if a purchase order or direct is sent out of the system, you could also search in here, pull it back up, and go back into the transaction for viewing. The product activity log is going to be accessible and viewable only from the product location maintenance screen in the system. And what you're going to see in this most of the time is automatic entries from the system when quantities on hand are changed, or new locations are created, or product is moved from one location to another. And the reason why it's mentioned here is because this log does allow for manual entries as well, as you can see towards the last couple of screens here. And it would allow you to add a little note, some additional descriptive information of perhaps why something was done a particular way, to jog your memory or as reference for someone else coming on later. The system activity log would normally be used by the system administrators to record any type of maintenance functions or things that they want to address later. More of a running note log as to what's been going on. Eclipse also uses this to, when they go ahead and do systems maintenance, they'll usually put entries in the log as well. Also the system phantom, if it goes to run processes and it has warnings or completions, it will also record this in the system activity log. And of course you can add your own manual entries as well. And now on to the real meat of the presentation, trackers. Trackers are a way of organizing tasks and taking portions of the tasks that you might have and delegating pieces to other people and kind of coordinating that all together. The real strength of this type of thing, obviously you could do similar things with a project management software, a spreadsheet, email, whichever, but with the trackers this is embedded in the Eclipse system, and they can be created from within a transaction, and they will also have links to transactions. So not only do you get to write the additional notes and keep track of the tasks, but the links to the transaction in the first place are embedded into it. So it's a nice way of jumping into the transaction, doing the bit that you need to do, updating the tracker, and it goes down the line. An extremely powerful tool if it's used correctly. Here's an example user job queue with a listing of trackers. In this case we're doing looking for follow-ups. Keep in mind when you change dates or you change what it is particularly you're looking for, you have to click the update button or else it won't refresh. In this case, make note of the little red button there. That little red mark tells you that that particular tracker hasn't been read yet. Trackers can have a wide variety of uses, and in this case, in this example, I'm using a tracker to deal with a lot job order direct that we've had to bring into our warehouse temporarily instead of send to the job site. Since it's a lot job and since it's supposed to be a direct, we of course couldn't receive it properly, so the receiving people have used this tracker as a way of saying which boxes went to what location, and then are able to send the tracker to the quotes team so that they know where the thing went when they go to retrieve it and finally send it to the customer. And the cool thing with this tracker, of course, is the embedded links. Since I tied this tracker to a particular order, clicking on the link in the tracker immediately takes you into the order to do whatever type of viewing or editing might be necessary to complete the task. Here's a simple tracker I've created for myself within my user job queue, in this case, just to remind me to call someone at a particular time. Trackers can be made just about as complicated or as simple as you would want to. This is about the simplest level that you could think of. You can see there's plenty of additional fields here that can be used if you want to create more complex transactions. Some of these fields will have predefined drop-downs like the categories and such. The system administrator can add more categories for you if the ones that are currently in the system are not enough. Most trackers are probably going to be created while you're actually doing something within a transaction. If you're in a product maintenance and a particular product that you're correcting, if you're in a customer maintenance and doing something with a customer or job, or more often I think probably in sales orders. And by creating the tracker within the transaction, it's going to automatically put into the tracker the links that are going to allow you, whoever or yourself, to jump into that transaction directly from the tracker, which makes it very, very handy to get back and forth with a minimum of fuss. When you're in a sales order entry or purchase order entry or customer maintenance and such, to start a tracker, you simply hit Shift and F4. Here's an example of starting a tracker from within a sales order entry. And when you hit the Shift F4, you'll get this Enter Tracker For selection menu to decide which queue you want the tracker to go into. Ordinarily, you'd create the tracker for yourself, unless, of course, it's going to go directly to someone else and you don't want any control over it. Here I've created a tracker in the sales order entry that I want someone else to look at, ideally in purchasing, to look at the pricing on a particular product that I think is wrong. As you can see here, the next action and the final action fields play an important role in this. The next action, even though this tracker is going to go into my queue, it's also going to go into the queue of the next action person that I've assigned it to for them to take a look at and add comments to and such. When the tracker is finally completed and to be closed, the person who's designated as the final action is the person that has control over closing the tracker when it's done. Once the tracker is saved, it's automatically sent to anyone or group of people that was indicated in the next action field of the tracker. There will be indicators in the user job queue for those person or persons, and more than likely on the message system as well. In the Eclipse message system, the conversations, a conversation thread will automatically be created with the creator of the tracker if there isn't already one in place, and you'll see a link to open up the tracker directly from within the message system, or you can go into user job queue and view it in there. The Eclipse messaging being tied kind of to the tracker allows you to have a conversation back and forth that is tangential to the tracker without having to edit it or do any official recording within the tracker itself. Here's the same tracker but viewed from the user job queue, and then once again notice the little red dot that's indication that this is unread and new. When we open up the tracker, we see the note of what it is that is expected to be done, and embedded within the tracker, since this tracker was created from within a transaction, links have automatically been put in to go to the sales order, to identify the customer number and customer maintenance, and the part number or part numbers of the items in question that were in the sales order. So a nice quick way of being able to jump to the issue at hand, whether it be, in this case, since we're dealing with a pricing issue, whether the customer is in the wrong matrix, whether the sales order was done correctly, whether the part number is maybe got something incorrect on the margin spread. So this is a very handy tool for being able to jump back and forth and get things sorted out in short order. When you get done doing whatever part needed to be fixed and you need to send a return message or possibly forward this on to someone else to take a look at, you do a new append and add to the message, and whoever it is you select is going to get the notification and take the next action. You can do an edit append. This would edit whatever existing append that you're looking at. Normally you'd only do this if the original information was a scrub. In most cases you're going to do a new append. If you have a common piece of information that needs to be modified back and forth between several people in the tracker, it can get really unwieldy if you're constantly appending or editing existing appends. It gets a bit messy. In this case, you can use a note, and this is kind of a common area where you can write out something and then several people can go back and forth and make modifications to it without having to go through the tedium of having to add appends. So once the append is done, as we see here, the originator of the message that was selected in the new append is pinged, and the attachment note of, okay, look at it now and see if the issue has been corrected. Once the append is saved, it's automatically sent, and the person on the other side of the append that it's being sent to will get notification, and of course you'll see an unread because an update has been done to that existing tracker. Once the actions that needed to have been done are done, you can go ahead and close the tracker. When you select close, it's going to ask for close type, and of course you're going to ask for both. The reason why there's internal and external markers is because this tool was originally created by Eclipse for the Eclipse help desk to handle Eclipse customer problems, and of course they just kind of rolled it out for everyone else to use as well because they decided it was so useful. So you of course put in a closing message. A lot of people don't do this. I think it's handy to know, because if you ever get questioned on it, you want to know why you did what you did. And then when you close that, if you're the originator of the tracker, as obviously you would be because you're the only one that can close it, the tracker will disappear from your queue. For some reason, which I find questionable utility, anyone that was involved in the tracker that was on an append, maybe sent to it a subtask, even though the tracker is closed, you'll get notification it's closed, but the tracker will not disappear from your queue until you remove yourself from the follow-up, and then and only then will it disappear from your follow-up in your user job queue. And here we see the process for someone involved in the tracker that was not the originator of the tracker, how they go about removing it from their follow-up and from their job queue. You just select the closed tracker, select remove me from follow-up, and now it'll finally disappear from the follow-up view in your queue. May be gone but not forgotten. Even though you close a tracker, they're still in the system, although there is a purge utility that can be run when things get too cluttered up when you're doing searches, and this should only be done about once a year. But closed trackers can be retrieved back again in case there's an issue. Even though they'll disappear from the user queues, there's two tools that you can do to get back at the closed trackers. You can either use this user activity log entry and put in the user that created the tracker and the type of closed and do a search. It also has a string searches, so you can narrow it down a little bit, and it'll, as you see here, the call tracking search, it'll show you the listing of what it retrieved. The second tool that you can use for viewing trackers, and especially trying to find closed ones, is this user activity log viewing. And again, you put in the user that sourced the tracker, or I believe the second field is probably for one of the people that might have been on the tracker. You can give it a date range and do an update, and it'll spit a nice handy little list. And of course, clicking on the list will allow you to jump back into the tracker that you're looking for. This feature will only be available if your company has purchased the Document Imaging Companion product and have it in place, as my company does. And this allows you to actually take screen captures or take document images and attach them to the tracker. Depending on what the tracker is being used for, this could be incredibly helpful. Say in the case of a lot job, direct shipment that had to be put into the warehouse temporarily, and since you don't have a receiving report to receive the products against, you're using the tracker to simulate a receiving process, and you could possibly attach the packing slips that came with the things in the tracker to notify the quotes departments they've got all the documents nice and handy. Just as a suggestion for possibility anyway. So attaching images is fairly dead simple, but once again you have to have the companion product in order for this to work. So in this example, say this is a packing slip. The packing slip would be removed. It would be scanned through a multifunction scanner printer, scanned to email, detached and sitting on the receiver's local PC. They go to attach the image to the tracker. They tell the software where the file is, and then in the attachment indexing you would probably change the description to explain what it is this document is, and you may have to in some cases select the document profile. In the case of my system, the document this is the storage location in Eclipse where the file is stored at, in our case docs, and then you go ahead and tell it index. Once document images are attached to a tracker, you'll see in the upper right hand corner a little picture icon there. As you can see, a little mountain with a sun on it and such. That's just a little visual notification that there are images attached. If anyone clicking on that in the tracker clicks on it, you'll see a selection list of whatever attached images might be on that. I mean, you can have quite a few in theory. Select the one that you want to see off the list, and the attachment viewer should automatically pop up and show you the document, which might allow you just to view it, or you could possibly reprint it for later purposes. This concludes our presentation on the Eclipse messaging subsystem, trackers, and activity logs. This has been a fairly brief presentation, but hopefully I've given you a good flavor of the capabilities of the system. It is a pretty complex subject. All the variations you could easily spend 2 days discussing, but I'm not sure anyone would want to hear it. Hopefully this has provided you a good foundation to come up with innovative ideas of using this very powerful tool that tends to be underutilized. As mentioned before, this works as well in the Solar interface as in eTerms, so if you're in a mixed environment you can still make very good use of the tool. It's just a little more unwieldy in eTerm. Thank you for listening, and as always, I am not Scott Zahn.